All right, so we're diving deep today, really deep into a moment, a pretty huge moment in Jacob's story, biblically speaking.
Huh.
We're pulling from this daily Bible study, specifically day 3, Jacob's deception and fleeing.
Mhm.
Buckle up.
Yeah, what strikes me right off the bat is how human this whole situation is. We've got Jacob, he's pulled off this, well, pretty elaborate deception to snag his father Isaac's blessing, the one meant for Esau, his brother. And Esau, understandably, the guy is livid, Jacob's on the run, his life's on the line.
Totally. And he's leaving it all behind, right?
Right.
Home, family, everyone and everything that's ever been his safety net. Gone.
Yeah.
All because of this one really big choice he made. Now, some of you might be familiar with his story already. I get it. But we're not here to just skim the surface. We're digging deep, unearthing the layers, the insights, and figuring out what this ancient story might mean for you, for all of us listening, no matter where you come from or what you believe.
It's easy to kind of like breeze past these familiar stories. But if you really stop and think about it, the emotional baggage Jacob's carrying it's immense. He's not just on a trip, he's shouldering the consequences of what he did, totally alone, facing a future that's completely unknown, completely uncertain.
Let's try to step into Jacob's shoes here. The study asks us this really powerful question. Can you see him wandering the wilderness, carrying the guilt of his deception and the weight of his isolation? That it adds, it's a familiar feeling for anyone who has faced the consequences of their mistakes. It's
Yeah.
like it punches you in the gut, right?
That fear, that feeling of losing your grip when your world just vanishes.
It does. This is a man who was trying to secure his future, but he was doing it through trickery, out of fear, out of anxiety. And it blew up in his face. It's almost like a cautionary tale, right? Showing how our attempts to control things, especially when they're fueled by anxiety, can lead to some pretty messy outcomes we never saw coming. So here he is, incredibly vulnerable, totally alone. And then something pretty extraordinary happens. Jacob's exhausted, he stops for the night, and the detail that gets me, he uses a stone for a pillow. Talk about hitting rock bottom.
Hmm.
And it's in this bleak, desolate setting that he has this incredibly vivid dream.
This dream it's packed with symbolism. There's this ladder, right,
Right.
stretching from earth all the way up to heaven, and there are angels going up and down. It's like a bridge between the human world and the divine. And at the top of this ladder stands God. Genesis 28:13 has God saying, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac.
And this is where things get really interesting. You'd think, given what Jacob just did, that God's first words would be, well, let's just say less than kind, some sort of reprimand. But that's not what happens at all. Instead, there's this reassurance and, surprisingly, a reiteration of a promise. God continues, the land on which you lie I will give to you and your offspring. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go.
Precisely. In the grand scheme of things, God is reaffirming the covenant made with Abraham and Isaac, this fundamental promise of land, descendants, blessings, the whole 9 yards. And he's doing this for Jacob, a man who's just committed a serious act of deception. It really highlights a core concept, a pillar of this faith.
And what would you say that core concept is?
It's that God's faithfulness, it's not dependent on us being perfect. The study says God's promises will not fail because they rest on his character, not on Jacob's worthiness. That's a huge statement. It suggests that even when we mess up, when we make big mistakes, the core of God's commitment, it remains. It doesn't waver.
Okay, let's break this down for everyone listening because there are some really important takeaways here. First, we have this principle of God's faithfulness. All right, and I'm quoting here, flaws, failures, and fears cannot undo what God has purposed in our lives. But how encouraging is that? It's like even with our missteps, there's still this bigger plan in motion. It's more than just saying, hey, everyone makes mistakes. It's pointing to a constancy that goes beyond anything we do.
It challenges this idea that we need to be perfect, that our imperfections disqualify us from something greater, from a path that's meant for us. There's this aspect of God that's constant, unwavering, regardless of whether we think we deserve it or not. Think about it. This promise wasn't something Jacob earned, it was given. And even his deception, even that doesn't erase it.
The second takeaway is God meets us in our wilderness. Jacob wasn't in a temple. He wasn't at some holy site. He was alone, in the middle of nowhere, with a rock for a pillow. The study points out, God does not wait for us to have everything figured out before he comes to us. He meets us where we are, often when we least expect it.
This is so crucial. We tend to think we need to have it all together, problem solved, before we can experience anything meaningful, before we can connect with something bigger than ourselves. But this story flips that on its head. It suggests that even in our most vulnerable moments, even when we feel the most regret, we're still seen, we're still met. It's about presence in the midst of struggle, not after we've conquered it.
And that brings us to our third takeaway, trusting God's guidance. When Jacob wakes up, he says, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it." That's from Genesis 28:16. It's so powerful. How often do we go through life feeling lost, completely alone, totally oblivious of the fact that there might be this guidance, this presence right there with us?
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? When have we felt that isolation, that uncertainty, and then looking back, we see those hints of guidance, those moments of unexpected support. It's about cultivating that awareness that even when we feel like we're in the dark, there might be something more at play, something we don't immediately grasp.
All right, so how does all of this ancient story, how does it connect with your life today?
The central message that keeps coming through is this. Even when we think we've messed up beyond repair, there's this unwavering faithfulness. It's knowing that you don't need to have all the answers, you don't need to be perfect to encounter something truly significant. And it's an invitation to trust in a direction, even when the path seems unclear or even a little scary. The study sums it up nicely. The same God who met Jacob in the wilderness meets us in our moments of doubt and fear. He offers us his presence, his promises, and his peace. These old stories, they still have so much to say about being human, about faith, about everything.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's recap the main points. We've talked about how God's faithfulness isn't shaken by Jacob's mistakes, how God meets Jacob not in a palace but in a desolate wilderness, and how Jacob's realization points to our own need to recognize and trust in guidance even when we're feeling totally lost.
And this brings us to something for all of you to consider. We've seen how these life-changing moments can happen in the most unexpected places. A barren desert, a stone for a pillow. What does it mean that these encounters, that God might seek us out in our own wilderness experiences, whatever those might look like for you? How does that change how you view your struggles, those times when you feel alone? What does it say about the possibility of finding something profound in everyday life, even in those moments that seem, I don't know, insignificant? It's a question worth pondering, that's for sure.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this has given you some things to think about, some new perspectives.
Absolutely.
See you next time.